Hello and welcome. You are listening to an informed take on current events brought to you by law students and staff of Queen's University Belfast. This is LawPod.
Hello and welcome to LawPod Student Focus. This is another episode brought to you looking at the student side of life in the law school at Queen's University Belfast, and also relating to life as a law student more generally. And in this episode, I'm here with Claire Ussher. Hello.
Hi, James.
Claire's from the Careers and Employability Service at Queen's, and today our topic is really about employment and how to move from being a law student at university into being like an employee. It's about employability, basically. So, well, Claire, you're very welcome.
Thanks, James.
Could you tell us just a wee bit about yourself and who you work for and everything?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Claire Ussher and I'm a careers consultant here at Queen's University. I work for the central career service here called Careers, Employability and Skills. And we're just sort of, our real main aim is to support students through just trying to negotiate their way into deciding what career they want. And our recent graduates as well, and just helping them with their employability skills to get there, to get a job, do a job and get another job if they want to.
So you're essentially the perfect person to be talking to today. So brief bit about me. I'm James Milliken. I'm a third year law student here at Queen's, and I've currently just gone through this process. So hopefully we'll be able to give you a little bit of information and just sort of take away a little bit of the difficulties surrounding moving from university to working life, which is obviously difficult in any area of life, but I think there's some specific challenges in law that we're going to get into that, really make it, this is a sort of podcast that I really would have wanted to listen to, about a year ago. So we did a little bit of not very scientific research with the third year class in Queen's. We just made a bit of a survey and asked people for their opinions on how they thought the career search and how the support from university was. And quick disclaimer, we're talking about Queen's University here, but a lot of this will apply to universities across the country, both in Ireland and the UK, and probably further afield as well. But we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that people have found specifically difficult, or that they've found that they would really like some advice with whenever they're sort of applying either for legal or non-legal careers. In our survey, a lot of people, I think it was about 82%, did feel like they wanted to go into the legal career. But, that leaves a lot of people who maybe want to go somewhere else or who are unsure. So the first thing I really want to talk to you, Claire, about is, interviews, because interviews can be very scary and they can be something that people get very worried about. But, what do you think makes a good interview? Like, what are the things that people can do to really make sure that they stand out in interviews and give themselves the best opportunity to get the job or the position or whatever they're going for?
Yeah, so James, that's a perfect question, because we do see a lot of this from kind of one-to-one work with students. They maybe have been through the process and have maybe had a barrier, have been unsuccessful, and they're just looking some prep, to overcome that. I suppose what I would say is if you do know that an interview is maybe coming up soon, it's really never too early to start thinking about that. Preparation is crucial, and a lot of students just really overlook that. Obviously, a decision has been made to apply to that employer prior to filling in the application and then going for the interview. So it does lead a bit of a lead-in time in terms of researching who they might want to apply for, and it's really around that stage that employers are really looking for students to have engaged and aligned themselves to the employer almost. So, at that stage, I would ask students to prep through even just trying to make contact with employers on campus, go to networking events if they can, online web research, sign up for newsletters, follow employers on social media. All that kind of lead in and that drip feed, rather than a 12-hour, 24-hour web research the night before the interview or even a couple of days beforehand, will really stand you in good stead, so that you're really differentiating yourself and showing that you can differentiate that employer from their competitors or somebody else who works within their marketplace. So I would say preparation is totally crucial there. That will then hopefully, if you do know that you've prepared, that old kind of phrase, be prepared, and if you're not prepared, prepare to fail. What you really should do is just to, as I say, use that preparation to give yourself the confidence that when you're at the ready to go stage for the interview, you've done really everything that you can. You've done your preparation. You know where you're going in terms of location and everything. But with that research, then you can really sell yourself to that employer and make yourself stand out, because they could be running assessment centres, they could be running interviews all day for a number of days if they're a larger employer, and they'll have heard the same answer time and time again. And if it's too generic, it really won't stand out. Students will be assessed on the same types of questions and answers. So to stand out, you really just need to show that you understand what their business does, whether it's a law firm or non-law firm. For the students that are studying law that want to go into other areas, you understand who their competitors are, what the challenges are, and you can really have a conversation with the grad recruiter that shows that you do have that understanding of their business, but also the opportunity that you're applying for, whether it's a training contract or, that offers something different than another training contract, or it's a graduate scheme in non-law that offers maybe some training in it or some opportunity for mentorship there and support. So it is crucial to do that and not just assume that having a quick look over the grad section and saying hello at a fair is enough.
Yeah, no, you made some really, really good points there. Some things that I probably wish I'd asked you before I'd gone for interviews. Just before Christmas there, I had a stage where I think I had 3 interviews in 3 days, which was fairly difficult, just preparation-wise, because they were coming thick and fast, and it's hard to prepare for 3 different interviews and 3 different styles of interviews in 3 different days. And that sort of brings me on to my next thing that I'd quite like to talk to you about is the different types of interviews that can be, that you could be subjected to is probably the wrong word, but that you can experience. And you mentioned assessment centres there. So what's the difference between assessment centres and interviews, and sort of what different types of interviews do you sort of think that students are best to prepare for or should look out for?
Sure. So I'll maybe just look at the different types of interview first of all, and then we can move that on to how that fits within the overall assessment centre. Now, every employer is different. The larger employers will have a really nice section on their graduate recruitment website that will explain and even maybe break down exactly what they're looking for and what you should expect at interview. They might even have some nice YouTube videos to explain that and really give you that kind of inside track. With that sort of information, there's really no excuse to have done the preparation and understand that it is maybe a different type of interview. So the biggest differences, James, that you would get is that some would be interviews where they'll ask for competency-based style questions, and that's give me an example of a time when you have worked as part of a team or worked under pressure, those types of questions. Other interview styles are those sort of strength-based questions that you really can't prep for. Those strength-based questions might ask you, what you like to do in your spare time, what are you most proud of? So they're just trying to anticipate where you see your strengths and where you would fit into their company and the potential for the role that you've applied for. So that's quite difficult to prep for. And if you're not ready for that, it can throw you, because you might have prepared for a competency-based question where you are selling the competencies and drawing on examples from your extracurricular activity, your part-time job, whatever, to evidence that you have the skill. There are some little techniques and tips that students may or may not have heard of when answering those competency-based questions. There's quite a nice tool called the STAR technique. S stands for situation, T for task, A for action, and R result. Now, you would never say the situation was, the task was, and the result was, but it's really just
like a framework to keep
in
mind. Yeah.
And if you are under pressure and they ask you a question that you haven't prepared for, you can pause for a moment. It might appear to you that it is a long time, but it might just mean that you take a sip of water just to gather your thoughts, and then just try and frame your question around that sort of formula. And what that formula does, rather than you just answering a question in relation to part of your team and you blurt out or call out, yes, I'm part of a team, I've worked as part of a team within my university on a small project. The STAR technique almost allows you to tease out a wee bit more detail and substance and measure to that, so that you're really giving yourself the ability to really showcase what you've been involved in and the extent to which you've developed that skill.
So it's sort of about getting as much as you can out of things that, if you only have that sort of short quick thought,
Yes.
that might be relevant, then it's a sort of way to get more out of that. It's a way, it's like squeezing an orange or something.
And students really surprise themselves, in terms of, students these days, a degree isn't enough anymore, are involved in so much activity in terms of extracurricular, managing part-time jobs, taking on opportunities like this within their school or their university. There's no point having all that extensive experience if you can't sell it or frame it. And it's even slipping in, headlines if you were working as part of a team to raise money for charity, how many of you were there, bit of detail there around perhaps how much maybe money you raised in an event or how many new members you signed up to a club or society, because that's kind of a headline that you might want to sell if it's a really decent stat.
There's one thing that I really noticed, or two things, and I think they're quite interrelated, and I'd be interested to sort of hear your thoughts on this. The first one is that you said about if you do all these things, you said maybe about having a part-time job and extracurricular activities and all those sorts of things. Don't be embarrassed to talk about them. Some people,
Definitely
I think
not.
Sometimes in Northern Ireland, people have this thing where they try and not, they don't want to come across as
They
sort
don't
of
want to blow their own trumpet.
tooting their own horn or whatever it
Yeah.
is. But that's literally the things that people want to hear about, especially in interviews.
It is.
So that sort of reticence isn't something that, obviously you don't want to come across as arrogant, but at the same time, be honest with yourself about what you do and what you have done and, how that can help you.
Definitely.
And that actually moves me on to the second thing, which is not just being honest with yourself, but being honest with the employer. Half-truths and things like that, they will come out eventually. And if you're trying to hide something, even if it's not a big thing, it's obvious, I think. So, employers, even if you say you haven't prepared the answer to the question,
Yes.
if you just say what you honestly think, I think that comes across a lot better. You come across as someone with sort of integrity and all that, rather than coming across and you're sort of saying a made up or just prepared answer. If you just answer the question honestly and openly, just say what's actually comes to your mind rather than trying to sound too polished or something like that as well, because they want people, they don't want robots.
They do. They don't want the cookie cutter, same person. And I think really what an employer is trying to draw out of that type of question is there is no right or wrong answer, but particularly in law, they're maybe just trying to understand your thought process, how you came to that decision, and in some cases maybe check your resilience as well. You might find that an employer, they're not trying to play good cop or bad cop, but they're maybe asking you a further question as to why you came to that decision.
Yeah.
And again, it's not to put you under pressure. It's really just to check that you have, again, the skills to have the confidence maybe to go out and work with a client, and the resilience, your bounce back ability, the ability to manage long hours and different things like that. So that can be part of it. Just going back to what you were saying about blowing your own trumpet with regards to the extracurricular, a lot of the law interviews might ask you why you want to be a lawyer or what you know about the firm, and that's where you can really sell your legal experience. So students, it's totally okay to have maybe just a couple of weeks work experience here or there, specifically in law, is perfect, and yes, you can bring that into the interview for that question, but based on your extracurricular, that's where you really can sell your skills. You'll not develop your skills within a work placement for a week within a law firm. Certainly bringing in your extracurricular activity during your university time or a part-time job where you've maybe been working for a number of months and have that opportunity to develop your communication skills through a project like this, or your teamwork through sport or something through your students' union. That's where you really do need to kind of give yourself credit for what you've done. We see it too often in our guidance or CV checks where students will come in and say, I've got no work experience. You get a conversation with them and they're actually a member of a society or a club, and they're maybe the secretary of that society or club, but they don't maybe see that as experience, and it doesn't always have to be paid. Experience can come from other areas,
volunteering or something.
Volunteering from church, youth club, university, even part-time work can be relevant to sell a skill. Just
to give an example of that, in my personal experience whenever I was doing those interviews, my legal experience was sort of quite limited in that I only had, I worked in a solicitor's firm in Lisburn for a couple of weeks every summer, really, and I did my schoolwork experience there. But a lot of my experience came from, my part-time job in a restaurant and organising stuff in sport and everything. One of the things that I think, we're going to talk about later, in the sort of the services that you can offer students, it's about how to recognise your sort of your transferable skills and how to sort of work out what you can offer to firms. So another thing you wanted to bring up, Claire, was assessment centres, because there's this sort of mystique surrounding assessment centres and how they're different from interviews or what they actually involve. So could you just give us a little bit of an insight into what assessment centres might actually involve?
Yeah, sure. So every recruiter is different. Some might require you simply to submit an application form and then they'll shortlist that, and it might be next stage is interview. However, for perhaps larger law firms, it might be part of a longer lead-in process where you submit an application form online. You might then be asked to complete an online psychometric test. Talk about those later on as well. But then if you get past that stage, you would hope you might get called to an assessment centre. Now, they're not all standard, but it could be a half day or a full day on an employer's premises with a number of other students. And what they can sometimes be made up of would be perhaps a requirement for you to sit that psychometric test again, just to check, that it was you that submitted the first one and completed the first one. But they can be made up of group interviews. They can be made up of case studies. They can include e-tray or in-tray exercises. They can, yeah, it really, it's really alien.
If you're not prepared, it's...
Exactly, it can be a shocker. You might always be asked to present in some way, shape or form. And then to top that all off, if you haven't gone through enough, be asked to interview again. So it is just trying to understand if it's not clear from the employer. Now, most will let you know what the assessment centre will comprise of and the different elements within that. But, it's never too early even to start looking at those. And our careers service website and a number of other websites, prospects.ice.uk, Grad Ireland and so on, will have really useful information on how to prepare for those and the intricacies of those.
We'll fire those links in there's a blog coming out with the episode, so we'll fire those in there.
But just even it's simple things, just in terms of even group work. If you don't contribute to a group, you can't be assessed on that. Mm-hmm. It's speaking out. You might be given a group challenge as part of a group of 6 to 8 students. You're all in it together, given that task, and employers aren't looking to pit you against each other. You're part of a wider process, and they're assessing different competencies and skills from those different elements of your entire recruitment process. They might be looking at your literacy and numeracy skills from your psychometric tests, your communication skills through your group work, your problem solving perhaps through group work and communication and so on. So it is just being aware of how that all works and just trying to prep for that. Understand that there are natural leaders. You might be naturally a shy person, but employers do understand that, and they understand that everybody has a role within a team. So if you are maybe taking on a role that isn't the leader role, it is a case of just making sure that you contribute in some way, shape or form to the problem that's presented to you that you have to work on. And that could be taking on the timekeeper role, maybe just agreeing and supporting what the other people are saying, restating points, as I say, managing time, keeping people on task as well as your contribution. But just be aware, we have heard from employers that, at times they will get students who simply don't contribute. It is only part of the assessment. It's not pass or fail at that stage, but it is scored and taken into account for the wider process.
Yeah, certainly. Another thing, just you said about preparation a lot.
Yes.
One thing that I would definitely recommend is being aware of what's going on in the wider world. I had a lot of stuff about Brexit in my interviews, about how that would affect law firms and everything. It might not just be Brexit, but be aware of what's going on in the news. Be aware of how things might affect the industry you're going for, because employers expect a little bit of knowledge. They expect you to be keeping up with what's going on and thinking critically about how that can affect that firm. So that's just something I just wanted to fire in there about.
No, I totally agree with that. I mean, it gets called commercial awareness, this kind of jargon term that you might see and other students might see if they are on legal careers related workshops and on websites. But, it is important to stay up to date with that. And again, that can come back to that kind of drip feed lead in kind of research that I talked about. As a student, you can sign up to newsletters from law firms. They might even be the types of information that they're sending out to clients. It's just familiarising yourself even through reading business press or The Economist, just even business terminology. Again, more so in England and Wales, they would be used to non-law students being at those assessment centres as well. But, if you are maybe given a legal case study or you're applying for a corporate commercial training contract where you're working with banks and finance, it is important just even to understand how a bank works. And in this day and age, it's something that's very easy to find out and to look into. And there are resources online, through YouTube, as I say, different careers law websites and so on that can kind of break down how you can develop your commercial awareness and hints and tips for that and understanding jargon.
I found it was complete. Like you had to have that. You had to have a wee bit of knowledge about Brexit and you had to have a wee bit of knowledge about the economy and everything. Even just basic stuff. What is inflation? How does inflation work? Things like that just are massively, massively important. And it takes 15 minutes to work out the effects of Brexit on a law firm.
And
Quick Google search does it.
Everybody,
Yeah.
because they want you to understand that it's not the hypothetical about what Brexit is. Because everybody should know by now what Brexit involves.
It's the practical effects
it's
of
the
it.
practical effects
and
of
how it'll
it.
affect your working life.
Exactly.
If you end up working in that firm.
And it's even if they don't raise Brexit, if they do maybe ask a commercial question or ask you to prepare one, it is that lead-in research to try and maybe follow a deal through the newspapers or the news that a firm has been involved in. If you can, maybe bring up something different than Brexit or artificial intelligence. What's new with law firms? What are their challenges? And that's something that students can perhaps ask if an employer is on campus. Just if they're running an event or a talk, don't be afraid to ask those types of questions. As I say, to give you that kind of competitive edge.
Yeah, but if in doubt, mention Brexit.
If in doubt, mention the B word. Yeah.
Mention the B word. Claire, you said about psychometric tests as well. I think a lot of people won't know what those are. Could you just sort of tease that out a wee bit more?
Yeah,
please?
sure. So psychometric tests can be those timed online tests. So it could be a scenario, James, where a student has applied online. The application form might not even be that detailed because the next stage for the recruiter is for the student to complete, perhaps within a set number of days, an online test. And that online test could include literacy and numeracy based questions. So you could be revisiting numeracy that you haven't maybe tackled since you were 16.
What's algebra?
Exactly, or working out fractions and so on. So certainly on our careers website we have access to a psychometric test where you can log in and practice those. Most universities will have them, and a lot of, as I say, graduate kind of careers websites will have more information on those. Feedback that we get from recruiters across the board, irrespective of the subject a student is studying, that tends to be where students dip out and drop out of the recruitment cycle.
So that's the sort of big cut-off?
I think it's something that students kind of either bury their head in the sand about, or they're maybe more anxious about the interview. Appreciate that students are busy. Academics come first. But if you are aware that the recruiter that you're potentially going to apply to is going to ask you to complete a psychometric test, it's never too early to start looking at those. It's training.
Yeah.
Just familiarising yourself with those calculations, literacy, numeracy within a time frame. It's multiple choice questions, and then for some law firms they throw in those critical thinking, Watson Glaser type tests. And again, some are online to practice. Usually if you are going to be asked to complete a psychometric test, the employer will give you some examples.
Yeah, there's usually like
sample
at
questions.
the start, like a sort of practice thing.
Yeah, so I would hugely recommend to students that they complete that, because it is crucial to do that. Even practically, if you find that you're maybe in a shared house and you've got kind of no kind of quiet time to do that, it is even giving yourself the time and space and the right environment to sit that, and that can mean maybe booking a room in the library or in the likes of our student guidance centre to have a bit of time and space without any distractions to sit those. But I would recommend just practicing those and getting your confidence up with them.
Another thing that we sort of found that was brought up a lot in the survey we did. I don't want to flog it out of horse here, but we got asked about applications a lot. Now a lot of it I presume is going to be the similar stuff, preparation and doing research about the firm and just making sure that you're sort of selling yourself, all the things we talked about in relation to interviews. Probably did this the wrong way around, actually. We probably could have done applications first, but anyway, as I say, I presume a lot of it's the same, differentiating yourself and everything. But is there anything sort of in relation to applications that you would specifically advise students to sort of look out for?
Yes, definitely everything that you've said there, all of the above. I suppose the difference is that you are hopefully going to be given a job description that will list in some detail about what that firm is specifically looking for. They've pretty much handed you the answers to the questions in terms of what they're looking for, so it is making sure that you have mirrored that and reflected that in your answers. Application forms, they're all online. What I would say is, again, just give yourself that time and space. They'll not all allow you to have a spell check on there, so it might be a case of copying and pasting from Word purely to check the spelling, not to copy a paragraph from a previous application form.
I was about to say, do not do that. Don't have one law firm's name in there.
And it's not even a lot, it's not
or
even
anyone,
yeah. And if you are applying to a certain firm, make sure you've spelled their name correctly. Law firms tend to merge at times. They might have an ampersand instead of an and. They might be an MAC instead of a MC. Just make sure that's properly. Right. Yeah.
And like even just there's one that said this has to be an Arial like size 14 font. Just do that. Just read the instructions very, very carefully.
Exactly.
Because it's just going to if you do that in Times New Roman, they're just going to put it in the bin because you can't
And if you want to be a
Yeah.
lawyer, it's attention to detail.
Yeah.
And that's one of the skills they look for. So even in the academic section of that form, James, we would see it at least once a week. At Queen's University, there's an apostrophe S for
Yeah.
Queen's. It's even simple things like punctuation within sections, not necessarily just the open questions,
Yeah.
blank box questions, even within your academics. Make sure that you've spelt your university name right. If you're adding in a lot of GCSEs, that you
Yeah.
haven't miskeyed,
Or
an
not
N
twice.
instead of an A.
Yeah.
So, I mean, even just for doing that, if it's the first time you've submitted an application form
Mm-hmm.
since you applied to university, make sure you've even got your your exam certificates in front of you,
Yeah.
so that you're entering the information there correctly. Obviously, all of your module grades correctly, because you don't want to, have any information missing there. But I just wanted to even highlight there, if there are any mitigating circumstances around why grades are perhaps lower
Yeah, maybe you're
at a certain period of life. Exactly. Most of the firms are open to, some text in the application for that. If
Yeah.
it isn't already in there, you might find how to deal with that in the frequently asked questions section of their website,
Yeah.
or you can perhaps reach out to the employer to see if they can consider that. Same if you need maybe a bit of support with extension to time for psychometric tests due to disability, you can ask for that. If you're happy to disclose that, it's pretty standard for employers to work with students on both of those issues.
Even just fire in a cover letter or something like that, just to sort of say, look, this is the situation and I'm doing my best here. And
Yeah.
they will be willing to, as you say, they'll be willing to work with you because, they want to get the best applications possible. So I think, that's a really good.
Yeah,
a
and
really
even
good
just
thing
what we see
to do.
sometimes with applications, there will be a word count.
Yeah.
It's just following that to the letter,
Just don't go
not going over. And why on earth, with all the extracurricular and experiences that you guys have, would you not sell yourself?
Yeah.
If it's 500 words,
Use every 500 word.
without waffling.
Yeah.
Do that, and obviously no bullet points in the application form. Save those for CVs. So.
But hopefully we've got through a fair bit there on sort of the substance of how to go from not having applied to anywhere to all the way through, preparing for your interview and then actually sort of doing your interview. But I just wanted to talk a wee bit, Claire, about some of the problems that we've found highlighted by the students here at Queen's, in that survey I talked about. And I just want to say as well that this was conducted at Queen's and in one third-year class in Queen's, so I don't pretend to say that this is going to be entirely applicable to every university in the country. But hopefully these problems are general enough that they're of general applicability, and they will, everyone can relate to these in some level. So, we'll maybe just talk through them quite briefly, and if you have any, any advice for the people who sort of are asking for these things, and these aren't specific quotes from any one person. I've just sort of aggregated them, and sort of, I don't want to be answering any specific questions. It's more about these general concerns. So the first one that a lot of people highlighted, I think it was a majority of the people that we surveyed, was, how do you get the knowledge about jobs? How do you get the knowledge about open applications? And, especially the smaller ones, because big firms, they have a big marketing budget, they can get posters, they can get whatever, but how do you find out about the smaller ones? Like, where are these opportunities?
Okay, so again, it's that kind of lead in from even first year. It's university's a new time for everybody. It takes maybe a first year student a bit of time to settle in, but we would really encourage even students in first year to start engaging with their career service and employers on campus from that early kind of stage in order to perhaps make connections and get advice in terms of where to look for those. Admittedly, yes, as you said, quite rightly say, the larger employers have the budget and the capacity to come onto campus. But, it is a case of perhaps even just using your local network in terms of your own regional law society, as in Law Society of England and Wales, Law Society of Northern Ireland, to have a look on there to see if there's any vacancies. Within the Law Society of Northern Ireland website, as far as I understand it, there could be two sections where vacancies are advertised, one called a Masters List and the other within their own careers and job pages. The Institute and so on will say that they'll recommend even looking on Twitter to the Law Society of Northern Ireland to see if any masters are advertising there. Again, it is a case of, I suppose, just if you do maybe live in a regional town, just making contact and reaching out to solicitors firms in that area just to see if they are planning on, taking anybody on. Because it's not just the large Belfast firms or London firms that offer training contracts. Admittedly, there's not going to be, 10 in a regional town in one solicitor's firm, but you could hit it at the right place and the right time that they are prepared to take on an apprentice. And it might just be worth a try. Some people can strike it lucky if they've maybe speculatively asked for work experience during the summer. with an employer. And I'm not saying that you have to work, for free to do this. It's not a, given that, that will lead to that. But, if you are maybe in that situation where you're still deciding about your career and you want to get maybe some work experience over the summer in a solicitor's firm locally, you could maybe strike it lucky and make a connection there to that firm if they've got a training contract going. But admittedly, it is difficult to find them. But again, if a master equally is looking for a trainee, they will use the likes of the Law Society to promote that. The larger firms and kind of medium-sized firms will usually reach out to the university locally or universities locally. So the likes of our university and other universities will have an online careers management system. Ours is called My Future. I know other universities will have one as well, that you log in with your student credentials and you can search for internships, training contracts and so on there. So again, that would be another strand to look at. Larger firms and kind of wider reach, there's Chambers Student Guide, Chambers and Partners Student Guide, online, lawcareers.net, and you can search by practice area. And so on if you're looking for that. Equally with the Law Society of Northern Ireland, you can search within Find a Solicitor and maybe take the strategy to look by practice area there and geographically again to see who might be in your local town or the next town over, just to see what solicitors firms exist. And then it is a case of just reaching out to them, just to see if anything's coming.
Yeah, so you just sort of think it's about being active. It's about actively seeking out those opportunities. Yeah,
because again, at the end of the day, as a solicitor, have to have that skill set and get your own clients, because essentially you'll be part of the business there too.
So Claire, another concern that we got a lot, and this is one that's going to be more applicable to Northern Ireland, but I'm sure more general advice will work for applications in the UK. This is about the IPLS, the Institute of Professional Legal Studies, and how you apply to that. So, just for a quick bit of background, that's where you do your solicitor or barrister training, and you have to apply to that separate. That's not part of. It's technically part of Queen's, but it's not really, and it has to be applied to separately. So some students found out that they didn't really know much about the application process, when to apply, how to apply. So do you have some just sort of general points that are worth thinking about for people who are coming through maybe, next year looking to apply?
Yeah, certainly. So again, just going back to the sort of conversation we had about finding a master, that sort of search and hunt and, developing work experience and so on should start early on, as early as possible, even end of first year, sort of second year to a lead in, because yes, James, you have to apply separately to the Institute of Professional Legal Studies, the IPLS, and you would apply early on in the first semester of your final year. Now they have an open day, which is very useful. And when I say open day, it's maybe for an hour or two, and that tends to happen fairly quickly whenever you're back in semester one. So I would recommend to any students who are wanting to apply to the Institute in September, October time for next September, to have a look out over the summer on the Institute of Professional Legal Studies website to see when that open day is going to be, because I would recommend going to that. At that open day, they'll hear from the director and the recruitment team there about what the application process is going to be, key deadlines, what they're looking for, how the process works, and so on. So if there have been maybe any changes from last year, any update, that's where you'll hear about it. And there's also an opportunity there to hear straight from the horse's mouth or ask any questions that you might have about the process. So in terms of applying, there are kind of two key dates. Opens usually around the start of September.
Yeah,
of the year before.
September, yeah.
And then there's an early bird submission where the fee is slightly reduced. I'll not say the fee because it
changes
might
every
change,
year, but definitely do that, because it's quite significant, the change in price.
And I don't know why you wouldn't, because I'll talk about the application form, but it's not that extensive in terms of what you put in there.
The only problem is getting references.
Yes.
And making sure that you need, I think, two academic references and one other reference.
That's not a relative.
Just don't leave that late, because I had a horrible experience. I was in Tenerife for my first week of uni and trying to get sort of academic references, and just waiting for replies for emails and trying to get in before the deadline's all very stressful.
Yeah.
Just take the stress out of it. Just do it really early.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you can get that application form in up until the 16th of November, usually, as of last year, and it's usually midday. So again, just be clear about exactly what time that closes at. And that's when the cutoff will be. And that's, for you to submit your application and your payment. Now, James, as you've said, it's important to have a lead-in references for that. When you are, looking into what type of references you need, the IPLS usually have a really extensive document online the details in the admissions booklet and the types of reference that they need. But as you say, as far as I understand, it's two academic references and someone that's known you for more than a year that's
something
not a relative.
Like that, yeah.
So because of that lead-in, it is obviously important to identify firstly two academics and then reach out to them and ask them, can they be your referee? Don't assume that they will be. My advice would be, if you are maybe asking someone to be your referee that is your academic, perhaps just in that email explain what the reference is going to be for. And if you have it, maybe even send in a CV, just around your background and so on, so that they can maybe comment on you in a wee bit more detail. But yes, certainly that would be the time frame that you'd be looking to submit. So it's a busy period because you're just back to university. You're in the middle of potentially coursework and classes and so on. So it's just being aware of that open day and that closing date. And then after that, it's setting your exam.
The exam, we don't even...
on the 18th, usually around the 18th of December.
No, it's a tough exam, but I don't think this is the time to be talking about the exam itself. That's maybe another episode.
Sure. And there are past papers on the IPLS website as well, just if students even want to have a look at that.
No, there's very often, various barristers and other people will offer classes. They're very expensive, but they're completely worth it. So, we'll probably do an episode on this as well, but, that's something just to be aware of, that there is an exam and it's a really horrible, nearly 4-hour paper, but it's fine and everyone gets through it. So, Claire, just as we're sort of wrapping up here, we said at the start you're from the CES, and I horribly guessed what the CES actually stands for. It's not the Careers Employability Service; it's Careers Employability and Skills, if I'm correct.
Yes, that's us. So students refer to us as CES or Careers Employability and Skills, but that's who we are.
Yeah. So you're now this is obviously just from Queen's, but I'm sure every university will have something similar.
Yes.
What I'd just like you to, just quickly sort of go through is just the various services that a service like, that the sort of service provides. What sort of things can students get from it? Just to wrap things up and, give us a wee bit of an idea about where students can go for help.
Sure, yes. And as you say, it's similar across all universities, and we do actually meet as careers teams. I'm careers professionals with other universities. Okay. I'm on a legal professions task group, sorry.
That's very fancy.
And I sort of represent Northern Ireland, and I can hear what the changes are to legal training, SRA and so on, for England and Wales, to support our students who maybe want to go there to do their training as well. But essentially, I suppose, there's a range of services that we offer to our current students and students who graduate 2 years after leaving university.
Oh, so you can come in.
You can,
oh, that's good. That's
and that can be the reality of the market. Where students maybe want to change career. They've maybe started a career that they are not happy in, maybe looking to move.
Okay, so it's sort of this aftercare nearly.
Yeah, and I suppose that's a message too. Please don't put the pressure on yourself that you have to have a job secured by September or after graduation. It doesn't work that way. It's better that you do choose something that you're happy with and you're going to succeed in. But I mean, the main types of service that we and other careers services will offer is the opportunity perhaps to globalise and internationalise your career, to work and study abroad. Mm-hmm. We've colleagues in our service who offer that service to students, whether it's going out in Erasmus or study USA. We also offer students the opportunity to get involved in activities with employers and events on campus, and that can be anything from our graduate recruitment fairs in October through to work experience and internship fairs, where employers are on campus actively seeking out students like yourself to promote their opportunities to and encourage to apply. In terms of even just what we talked about, application forms, interviews, assessment centres throughout the academic year, and both in semester 1 and 2, we work with employers to come in and deliver sessions on those, so students can go along to those and really just hear straight from the horse's mouth what a graduate recruiter is looking for and how to develop those skills, hints and tips and so on. So I'd really encourage students to engage with those types of opportunity, as well as the opportunity to meet an employer maybe for the first time, or an employer that they are keen to work with. And then we offer what you would expect from a career service, that kind of one-to-one support. Okay. We do understand that every student is different. They have different wants and needs, backgrounds, experiences, and they're maybe trying to process all of this. We have first years who know exactly what they want to do. We have final years and maybe graduates who just still don't know what they want to do. So we're here as a team to support students to kind of navigate and understand. And then we run employability development programs, so programs that will develop leadership. We've developed new ones to try and reflect the skill set that employers will be looking for in the future, likes of design thinking, innovation boot camps. As I said, opportunities during university, we would facilitate the Degree Plus Award. So award for extracurricular activity, whether that's through clubs and societies, students' union, or activity outside of the university as well. So as I say, just awful opportunities to engage with employers and develop their skill set while they're here at university.
And I presume that's just sort of similar across the
It
board.
would be,
Yeah.
yes. Yes.
Well, Claire, I think that's sort of more or less all that we wanted to touch on there. I think hopefully there's quite a lot of good content there for, for students who are maybe in their final year, second year, whatever stage they're at. Just, that it's sort of helping them realize that, it's okay. It'll be fine. There's plenty of resources out there for you. There's lots of opportunities. And probably the piece of advice I would give for people to take away is just be active, go out and look for those opportunities. And I presume you'd sort of say something similar.
Definitely. Just in terms of making decisions, what we would say is, as I say, start developing your skills early, get involved in making the most of your time at university so that you do have something to sell in an interview or on an application form, and even just try and get some work experience to confirm that that is a career path for you. It builds toward your CV if that is the case, and it rebrands you towards that focus. Alternatively, it might be the best thing you've ever done in terms of reevaluating what you need to do before you're fully committed to, a training contract or graduate job.
I think that's a very good place to leave it. Claire, thanks very much for coming in and talking to us. We'll put the link to sort of the Student Guidance Centre and CES and everything in the blog for the website so people know where to come. Or not for the blog for the episode so people know where to come. And, well, thank you very much. Thanks for coming in. That was Student Focus, and that was our employability episode. You've been listening to LawPod, an informed take on current events brought to you by students and staff at Queen's University Belfast. This episode was produced by me, James Milliken, and our theme music is by Colonel Chocolate and the Justice Triangle. LawPod is funded by the Queen's School of Law and the Queen's Annual Fund. You can follow us on social media at QUB LawPod on Twitter. Our website is lawpod.org for any further information, and do check out our show notes, which will contain useful links to all the topics covered in today's episode about employability. And for any future episodes, you can find us on iTunes or wherever else you get our podcasts. So thank you for listening. This was LawPod.